about the awesome deal tonight that when you order a main course, for an extra 5 shekels, you can get the alcoholic cold punch. And I always make sure, to taste what we offer so that I can tell you how delicious it is. It's really yummy. Thank goodness. It's good I tasted it like an hour ago, because that way the alcohol is already passed out of my system. It was very rich in alcohol, David. Okay. This is a fancy setup. Oh, okay. Well, good evening. My name is Deena Levenstein, and okay, whatever. And I am your hostess for this evening. It's wonderful to have you here. I'm a little sick and I just had a coughing attack, so if I leave at any point in the middle, don't anyone take it personally, and don't worry about me, because I'm just out there trying to catch my breath, and that's not something that anyone should worry about. Okay. So tonight's event is about personal epiphanies, because it's about to be Shavuot, and most of us associate Shavuot with the giving of the Torah, and that's the national revelation, and so I thought, well, let's have an event about personal revelations and epiphanies. And I have taken myself out of the program, but I am going to read something that I wrote today. So I'm back in the program without being written in there. By the way, you guys should have programs on your table. Do you not have one? Okay. Do you have 2? Can you pass them over there? Thank you. The way it's going to work is that after I do my welcomes, which seem to take longer than I always expect. Like when I look at the video afterwards, I'm like, oh my god, that's like 10 minutes. Anyway, after that, we're just going to go through the program because everyone should have it in front of them. Each person will just get up in their turn. I will not be introducing like each person individually. So this is a Facebook post that I wrote today. Because that's where all of our epiphanies happen. It's on Facebook when we should be doing our work. And it's about tonight. Sitting here crying. You know, it's so hard for me. Get to that. Sitting here crying. You know, it's so hard for me to decide to organize an event. I come up with ideas I love all the time, but being an idea person is really the place to stop for the faint of heart. To actually take an idea that you think is really cool and put it into action is an entirely different monster. It is very scary. This time, it took me so long to finally say to David, the owner of Tmol Shilshom, yes, I will do it. I just couldn't. What if? But with plenty of chizuk from my family, especially my sisters Devorah and Rachel, I finally said yes. And then in a flash I put it out there. I am hosting an evening about personal epiphanies, and the stage is yours for the taking. And then I waited. And then beautiful story after beautiful story came in. Exactly the number I needed to fill up the program, and such an amazing variety of stories, all to be told tonight from the heart. A couple of the women will be telling their stories in front of an audience for the first time. I just read one of them and found myself crying partway through. It's no simple task to get up there and tell a personal story, and I am so deeply touched by the fact that by putting myself out there, by creating the stage and then waiting, I have given these people the opportunity to share their stories with others, touching on other people's lives through their own. And so yes, I'm crying because I am so happy that somehow I came to say yes. And tonight I am hosting what should be a really beautiful, unique evening in Jerusalem. See? Facebook is okay. It's not okay. It's not okay, Rachel. Okay, so I think I'm done with my with my intro. Oh, except that, of course, my thank yous, which, I mean, I say thank you here to the storytellers of the evening. It was your piece that I was reading when I was crying. Yeah, I know. No pressure, no pressure. It really, it's like, this says it all, like that, you know, it takes so much courage to get up here, and I appreciate so much, because that's what makes my events. I create my events so that people can come and share their ideas or their talents or their stories, and then it takes the people to actually have the courage to fill up the program so amazingly. And of course, very, very warm thank you to David and the staff of Tmol Shilshom for always hosting my events amazingly. I need not say more. Alright, so we're going to start, and as I said, so just have the program in front of you and we're gonna go through it. Do that.
Okay.
Deena, you're a rock star.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening everyone. Does that work? The microphone? Yes? So after such an introduction, I feel a little bit pressured. And I hope I'm not going to make anyone else cry. But if I do, as a yoga teacher, what I would suggest is just breathe through it. Okay? Anyway, welcome to everyone, and especially for one of my Yiddish yoga students who would come, and I'm so happy that he's here. I gave a title to my story, A Simple Revelation, or How I Came to Teach Yoga in Yiddish. The story, or rather two stories I'm about to tell, fit the definition of revelation or epiphany by Webster's dictionary only partially, and I would not dare compare them to any biblical revelation. They were neither sudden nor divine, although if you believe in karma, you may think so. They were, however, astonishing and enlightening. What was revealed to me is something very simple, and it could be revealed to anyone. Since my revelation was not sudden, telling its story in 8 minutes is quite a challenge. That's why I decided to write it down. The first story is how I discovered Yiddish. My story is very different from most people's encounter with Yiddish. My grandparents or my parents spoke it when they didn't want to understand. I grew up in communist Hungary in the 70s and the 80s, and just like many of my friends, without having ever set foot in a synagogue, without knowing anything about Jewish history, holidays, or Jewish life elsewhere. I had not seen a single Hebrew letter and had not heard that a language called Yiddish existed until I was 21 years old. And it was only at age 30, with a graduate degree in Yiddish in my hand, that I found out my grandparents actually spoke Yiddish when they were young. I first heard about Yiddish at a seminar on historical linguistics of Germanic languages at the University of Budapest in 1986. The following year, I was enrolled in the first ever course on Yiddish in Hungary. This was not just any university seminar. It was a huge social event, one of the first occasions when anything Jewish appeared in the public sphere. The news of that course spread underground, and many people from outside of the university attended it too. It was sort of a Jewish coming out party with a euphoric atmosphere. The professor, a well-known Hungarian linguist, himself only learned about the existence of Yiddish a few years earlier, accidentally. And that's another amazing story of revelation, which I will maybe tell next time. I came away being able to read Yiddish, but having no idea that there was a vast corpus of literature one could read, and that millions of Jews had once lived in Yiddish. I came away with a warm feeling and some unexplainable attraction to Yiddish, feeling that there was something more to it than jokes and anecdotes, but not really knowing what. That secret was revealed to me a few years later when I attended the Yiddish summer program at Oxford University. That's where I first met people, both old and young, who spoke Yiddish as their mother tongue. That's where I heard about Yiddish newspapers that were still published and Yiddish institutions that still operated. And that's when I realized that these were just the remnants of a whole world that had once existed. Fast forward, after a series of lucky coincidences, if there is such a thing, and years of hard work, I graduated from the Yiddish Studies program at Columbia University and subsequently taught Yiddish at various universities in the US for 10 years. The second revelation of something obvious The story of how I came to teach yoga in Yiddish took place just recently. I made Aliyah in 2010, and upon a visit back to the US, I attended a Yiddish language summer camp where I wound up teaching yoga in Yiddish for a week. How this happened is quite simple. Attending the camp is expensive, and people who teach something get a discount. By the time I decided to go, all the language, literature, and folklore teaching spots were filled. I was offered the option of science, art, or sports. I thought hard about which of these is even vaguely possible for me to do, and decided that since I have been practicing yoga for many years, yoga it will be. The revelatory moment came while I was teaching. It was that it is possible, that I can do it, and that it feels the most natural thing in the world to do. Yoga was the biggest success of all the activities that year in the camp, and I got the nicest compliments in my whole life, and everyone encouraged me to continue. So I enrolled in a yoga teacher's training course, and now I teach yoga in Yiddish here in Jerusalem. The icing on the cake is that some of my yoga students actually came to yoga because of Yiddish and not the other way around. I am proud to say that the first generation, probably at this point 3 or 4 people, of people for whom Yiddish is the natural language of yoga came from my school. A good friend of mine from Hungary once asked me, jokingly of course, that if I wanted to read, write, and speak a language no one understands, why not just stick with Hungarian? Why do I need Yiddish? The answer lies in what I wanted to convey here. Having been deprived of a meaningful Jewish identity as a child, I had a great yearning for something to fill the void. When Yiddish was revealed to me, all I had to do is follow my instincts and always follow the next logical step in my life. That is why I think that my story, as unusual as it sounds, is an ordinary one, and maybe with a bit of luck, anyone can find their own path to their own yoga in Yiddish.
Whoever's up after me can open the door if they need to. Hi everybody. Thank you so much, Deena. I need this. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I realized that I was coming up on my mom's 20th yahrzeit. It will be on Tet Zayin Tammuz, and right before the fast, and I, unlike during the regular last year and the year before that, I kind of, in previous years, I would try to avoid the day and just like slip by, like let it go. Oh, it's here, it came, it went. Let it pass. I didn't want it to overcome me. I always felt that it was something that dealing with my mom's passing was something that I dealt with, and I dealt with it well, and I overcame, and I put it in a box, and I put it on the shelf. And I'm open about it. I've spoken about it. I speak about it to my friends. I've grown from it. I've learned from it, and it's who I am today. But coming to the 20th year, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. And I really felt like I needed to commemorate that and give tribute to my mother. Some of you here actually knew her. My grandmother would tell me that my mom was brilliant. I knew her all my life until she passed. I was 16. She passed when I was 16 years old. She was a poet. She was an artist. She painted. And she was a pianist. She studied at Juilliard in New York on the weekends. She also was a tormented soul. When she was 16, she developed schizophrenia because of an overdose, experimental overdose in high school. And that was her torment for the rest of her life. And she had started writing about this in a journal that I found. And I will share with you a part of that piece of her life. Obviously in the context that she did have a journey, as we all do, of highs and lows and highs. And as I will share you something that's very deep and very thought-provoking and emotional and sad, she also had an opportunity to get married and had children, which really gave her a lot of happiness. So I will share with you 2 poems of hers. In her poetry later on in life, when she did develop her sense of self and her happiness, and she grew, and she grew to love her life a bit more, to appreciate the life and the gift of being, let's say, born again, by the gift of being able to be married. It was just it's just an amazing journey that she was on, and I learned a lot. So I'll just share with you these straight two parts of her. Little tears. Little tears gently flowed upon her face, wetting her eyes and reaching her cheeks. She did not realize how foolish she was, wasting her energy on something not real. Her tears fell heavy, her heart ached. She felt her being actually being destroyed, and all she could do was cry and cry. And then it began to rain, and her teardrops and the sky's teardrops mingled with each other, and they fell and reached the dewdrops of the earth. Why must we die? And that she did forevermore. They called it suicide. True, 1 or 2 called it love. The need to reach true love, to be with God up above. For on earth below, you can hardly feel no love. People do not want to understand or give of self to make one glad. This young woman had no choice, to be alone or to be with God, to feel just torment and misery, or to be with the angels and be free. Joan Reese Kadosh, this was written between the years of 1970 and 1974, before her marriage to my father. Then we have her, it's in here. Then we have her, she wrote in different colors. Sometimes she wrote in red, sometimes she wrote in green. I don't know the significance of it. And I always wondered if I could actually share. There are actually flower still prints within the book, that are pressed within the book. And the one I would like to share actually, was obviously at a high point in her life. And on the top it wrote type. She wanted to print this. She sent them out. She wanted to be published. So I guess I have her permission to share it, right? She holds a flower in her hand and places her mind upon the stars and floats with the sun above and delights in the moonlight. She blesses all the birds that fly and watches little babes cry. She waits for the rain to fall and for the little tress to become tall. She sits next to a flowing stream and watches the water trickle by her. The big tall mountains make her feel small when she is alone. When the dewdrops do form, the beauty of the sky can be seen all around, of different shades of blues and hints of blossoming oranges, and all of a sudden bursts the sun anew to join her in a new day, and she is glad. She is glad that she is there to partake in God's creation. Her loneliness has fled her soul, her weakness transformed into strength, her fear made into beauty, and her ugliness has made her finally free. As she sits by the sunrise, she ponders all God's creations, the good and bad and fun and evil, and she is glad she is part of them. And she sits silently until the nightfall, and with the moon and stars approaching, she falls into a deep sleep, feeling content and warm, knowing that she truly is part of this wonderful creation, and that all this beauty was created for her alone, to enjoy and partake. And with feeling of bliss, she was glad she was alive and could be a witness to all this loveliness. In 1991, I was in 6th grade. My grandmother told me that my mom developed breast cancer. It was a 4-year battle. Eventually the cancer spread, and she fell and broke her hip, and they decided not to operate. So she was in the hospital. It was June 1995, and she was there, and we visited her every day. And it was coming up to my first summer, and I was supposed to go on a trip to Israel, my first ever trip in Israel. And I didn't know if I should go or not. So I asked my rabbi, and he said, your mom will want you to live a life. She's not going to want you to wait around for her to die. She wants you to live. You deserve to have your own journey. So I took a trip. I left her on a Wednesday, and the first time we made it to the hotel as a group, it was a Friday night, it was Shabbat. I get to the hotel, I walk down the stairs, I realized, wow, this isn't it supposed to be bigger than it was? I remember the impression of it being a little bit smaller. And then seeing that, I thought it was supposed to be bigger. I get to the hotel, and I didn't know what to say. I said, I'm here, God, I'm here, I made it, I came, I'm ready, now it's time, I have to pray for mommy. So here goes. God, please help her. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any words. I can't ask Hashem to let her go. She's my mother. I can't ask Hashem to keep her alive because she was in pain. She was suffering. God also through her tormented, through the schizophrenia that broke down her mind, and also through the body. But I did remember before I left Israel, when I would ask her, Mommy, how are you feeling? She would say, thank God, God is good. God is good. She wasn't afraid of it. Because of the torment, she knew that there was something better, and she wasn't afraid. Lesson number 1, the biggest lesson, right? But I asked Hashem, this is the revelation part, okay? What am I supposed to pray for? What? You know what, God? Whatever you decide, I'll be at peace with. Whatever you decide is going to be the best. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but what you decide, I'll be at peace with. And I continue to fill the void by turning to God, as my mother did fill the void through her writing and her art and her music, and also her journey on to believing in God, and her emunah, the unfoundering emunah. And I learned that Sunday that I was visiting in Yad Vashem, and I saw somebody that I knew, and he said, Annie, come. What are you doing here? How come you're here? We just got on the trip. You missed us already? What are you doing here? And he said, Annie, come, sit down. And I knew right away he was telling me the news. And I didn't wait for him to answer. And this is the poem I'll just share with you. I went back to Yad Vashem last weekend, when this all ends off, because I think that I spoke for a bit. I found out in Yad Vashem that my mom passed away. I found out that she passed away on Friday, 1 p.m. New York time, 8 p.m. Israel time, Shabbat. That's where I was, at the Kotel. The closest I had ever been to God was the closest she had ever been to God, which is where she wanted to go, which is where the souls go. Who knows? Gotta believe in something. What comforted her comforts me. And this is what I wrote when I visited Yad Vashem last year. Sitting on the same bench in Yad Vashem, I knew what he was going to tell me all those years ago, so I told him I knew, and I sat down on the bench and closed my eyes. I said goodbye then to my mother, who left this world to another, where she was meant to be, where she craved to be, where she would soar and be close to our God, the one she loved so much. Watch over me now, as the souls of the Shoah watch over us all. God is good, Mommy. You were right all along. He gave me an angel to protect me. He gave me you.
Hi everybody. My name is Yair. I'm going to talk about some kind of a revelation. This is not really a story, but it's something that is based on a story that happened. And revelation was great. I like the idea, the challenge that Deena gave us she gave everyone, of finding a way to express some kind of personal revelation in the context of what we're talking about at this time of year. You can really feel the world is coming to this, an echo of the great revelation, which is still echoing. At any rate, so the background to the poem I'm going to read is that I was, let's go back to the title, Connection. So it's something that intrigues me, it fascinates me. You think about how here we are, no man is an island, or as my flatmate says, except for the Isle of Man. But he's British, so he says those kind of things. He's great. So, but you know, we live in the world, and we are individuals. But there's this connection that we're all thinking about a lot, and even at our subconscious, that there are ways in which we connect to each other, and how is it, and the different types of connection. So I was at an event, at a setting where I was jamming with somebody. I was playing some music, and he was rapping, and it was incredible. And I just had this moment where I felt there was a click of a connection that goes beyond just the basic conversation that we have. But as one human being to another, there was something that was more profound. So I wrote this a little afterwards. Okay, here we go. Here reach I up, inwardly upward, borne upon eagle fantasy upraised wings. So specially alone, so unique, yet so painfully private, the language of creative sharing unfolds to be so very different, other than the closed world that is so staunchly fortified with imagination. Yet it exists, occurs, expresses in being experiences, sometimes so primitive, so basic in their expression, that the soul of me, of you, surely finds only some slight side, some slivered facet of its essence, expressed in these harmonious jammings. Here we find ourselves, in this moment of silence, or of singing, of wordless eye lock, of infinite unbounded smile, or heaven-stretching, soul-soaring laughter, to be together, to express organically, one as one, to be one. Yet the grey stones of surfaced, bounded words and more words tilt our attention now from tasting of eternity to finding ourselves once again, behind gross bars of vulgar masquerade, these fleshy stupid masks we wear. Here we fade and float in whispering mists. Essence is varnished and overpainted by this think-ticking film that covers and confuses, leaving us embittered with only sweetish cinnamon dregs. As our cinema corridor light-dazzled eyes speak so firmly of this must be real, concrete of compulsion, come to clamp, to fill and confound, killer of hope, barrier to eternity. So that's a take on trying to come to terms with this concept of, on the one hand, finding these moments that we have with people. Sometimes they're strangers, sometimes they're the people that we know in the deepest way. But finding a way to connect with them, a moment. Sometimes, as I said, it's a silent moment. Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's just this laugh. Sometimes it's someone who's just standing in line with you waiting for the bus, or something just happens, and there's something that goes deep. So that's what I think of when I say connection. I think it's incredible. So the question is, how do we get to more of those? My issue, the title was reaching out from behind our masks. For those who don't understand, I have to translate. A mask is something that hides the inner essence. The truth is, I wrote this at around Purim time. It was close to the time of Purim. Purim is the Jewish festival where everything is upside down, everything is reversed. That which is revealed is hidden, that which is hidden is revealed. And that's why we wear masks and costumes, dress up, as we say. So that's the idea, I think. I think in sometimes our externalities are really the mask. On Purim we wear a mask so that our real essence can come through. Some say that Purim is the holiest day of the year, and I try to be aware of this, in that we can really connect to people in a way that goes beyond anything else any other time. And you can see it if you try to tune into it. Maybe have a little to drink also. But it's part of the idea of Purim. So what's the essence then? I think what Purim can teach us, as we're standing right before Shavuot, is that there's a connection between Purim and Shavuot. But the connection is that sometimes, yes, we need to look deeper, and sometimes our mask is really our thoughts and our things that we're so focused on in front of me, hiding you from me, or me from you. So it's important to try and put those aside. And that means not thinking so much, not analyzing so much, but trying to reach out to the people around us and trying to allow us to be ourselves in the real way. I want to end with a short story which gives a hint of the echo of what maybe this will look like one day. There's a story of that Rav Shlomo Karlebach tells about the Rabbi Aharon Mikarlin, one of the rabbis of one of the famous Hasidic dynasties. Ka Echsof, the song that many sing on Friday nights, is very popular these days, was written by him. So the tradition was to pray the afternoon prayers, mincha, very late. Sometimes it was really nightfall. They had a tradition. This was the way they did it, but it's an unusual tradition. One day he says to his followers, he says, "Okay, we're going to a different town to pray mincha." They say, "Okay." So they bundle up everything on the wagon and off they go. And night falls and it's 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock and it's getting late. Still afternoon prayers, right? So they arrive in this village, and there's one Jew in the town. They go to this little inn. And they say, and he says, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm the only Jew around here. You know, I try to do what I can, but it's what a privilege to have you over here, Rebbe, and your students. What can I do for you?" He says, "Please give us a place that we can pray mincha, afternoon prayer." It's now about midnight, and they get into this building, and Rav Shlomo Karlebach says the Karliner Hasidim. I've actually been into a Karlin shul. The Karliner Hasidim, when they pray with all of their force, all of their energy, and all of their might.
Wow.
Right. It can be like being in a stadium, in a football stadium. You hear these like roaring their prayers. So they started praying, and they understood, hey, if the Rebbe brought us here today, especially to pray mincha, there's got to be something really special. So we really have extra intensity. It must be really, really crazy, really deep. So they start shouting and shouting and shouting, and who wakes up? All the non-Jewish residents of the village. Suddenly, in the middle of Russia at midnight, they hear these people screaming and crying and shouting, and they get a fright. They think obviously there's a fire, because why else would they be shouting? So they get buckets of water and they come to the building, and they say, "So where's the fire?" And as Rav Shlomo says, they saw a fire, but it wasn't a fire that was burning and destroying the world. It was a fire that was creating goodness and building. And the story goes in different versions, but basically they started praying with them. These Gentiles, these non-Jewish villagers of this little town, they prayed with these Hasidim, this Karlin Hasidim, each one crying and shouting and screaming in their way of such deep and intense expression. And then there's a second part of the story which connects back to as they were leaving, they say to the Rabbi Aaron of Karlin says to this old innkeeper, he says, "Tell me, do you have some message for me?" He says, "Yes, actually." He says, I don't remember how old he had been, either 7 or 10. So when I was a young boy, the same story happened. I think it was the Baal Shem Tov who came here, and he did the same story. He came also in the middle of the night, and they prayed with such an intensity that it woke up all the people of the village. And they came and they prayed together, and they ate together, and they brought their fruit and vegetables, and they had such a celebration. It was a taste of the world to come. So that's really the story, and I think that we have our various circles, but maybe that's also a way of connecting, getting deep, looking beyond the essence, beyond the externalities, and sometimes it's messianic. It's something that we can't reach all the time. But this could be a revelation of ours that we can maybe try to be open to in our day-to-day life. And to look out for these things, and maybe not to look at our phones so much all the time, but to look around at the people around us, and we may catch some of these moments. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rachel. I do a bunch of things, and one of the things that I do is I'm also host of the Jerusalem Poetry Slam, which is a spoken word poetry competition that happens every month. If you're interested in that, you can check it out on Facebook. And I have a poem for you today. This poem is called 7 Observations on Observance. 7 Observations on Observance. 1. Nietzsche said, "It is terrible to die of thirst in an ocean." I hold God like a seashell to my ear, an echoing rush of resonance. How strange it is when you discover that you are not drowning in an ocean. An ocean is drowning in you. 2. Late at night, when I can't sleep, God and I have pillow fights. The feathers swirl around us like a snow globe of angels losing their wings. It is a lightness that is suffocating. 3. I imagine the Rambam leaning into a microphone at a packed poetry slam, and in that annoying voice of choice preferred by so many slam poets, yelling, 13 things I believe about God, number 1. Aren't we all just know-it-all, poet-alls, spitting hip-hop hypocrisy? We persist to insist that God exists in lists that we can count and understand, and then dismiss. It is much easier to let the catechism out of the bag. 4. A crowd gathered in front of the Kotel this morning like a peaceful protest. God hurled a canister of tear gas at them, but the weeping, wailing women did not disperse. I watched a woman with closed eyes and open hands brush her fingers over the ancient stone as if God were Braille, as if you could read him just by touching the surface. But we had never meant to go blind on purpose. 5. Sometimes God is a needle in a haystack. And sometimes God is a light bulb in a drawer full of mothballs. And sometimes I amuse myself with ridiculous metaphors that don't hold up, like an invertebrate with vertigo. 6. We used to unravel the knots in our stomach, turning heartstrings into kite strings, threading them with beads of sweat and skeleton keys that we fly high into the clouds as if we were trying to unlock the heavens. But now we know that lightning burns us. 7. I hold God like a seashell to my ear and hear the sea splitting in 2. I absorb these living waters in osmosis of these 5 books of Moses caught somewhere between Revelation and Revolution. Thank you.
That was real cute. So, okay, so hi. Thank you so much, Deena, for doing this. This has been so much fun. Anyway, so eternity touches time. I came. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Or should I take it out? Okay, so I came to Israel 1999. I came here because I had a moment in Budapest, Hungary, where I attended an exposition, an expo, different countries represented. I was on a search because I was born in a Hindu family. I went through Christianity a little bit, and I was misunderstood in America with the church. So when I hit Budapest, this exposition really spoke to me. I walked past the booth and I saw different countries. There were pictures of the shofar, there was Shavuot, Sukkot stuff, and I just had a very strong emotional reaction. And I didn't really know what it was all about. So I parked that revelation, if you will, for a few years, and I came, like I said, in 1999. When I hit Ben Gurion and I came out of the airport, I felt like I came home. I mean, I didn't know what this was all about. And then 2 months later, I met a couple of rabbis who were very well versed in lost tribes. And they said, you know, what are your family names? So I go something like Matani, Matana, Matani, Shoshanani, Sujanani, that's my father's last name. And Bina was my name from birth. I have a brother named Moti. I've got a sister named Gita. So that was kind of freaky. It was really, I was like, oh my goodness, don't tell me this. It's almost like it was breathtaking. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. So anyway, I went a few months later to check out conversion classes. I didn't feel ready. I really didn't. I started to do Jewish things, mild observances. And I made friends, and it was in 2004, I was volunteering with the AACI, and Yom HaShoah, and the siren went, and that was a very, very significant moment, because after that, people were sharing about their losses in the Shoah. So that's when eternity touched time. It came intuitively that if I think myself to be a Jew, that I have to come home all the way and be counted. Those are how the words descended within my own neshama, and I was floored. Again, it was a very, very important moment in my life. The next morning, I was in the office of the Beit Din opening a file. I had stayed current with my visa going in and out every 3 months. So that was my moment. It took me like 4 years before I came to that place. So I did the conversion. I finished the conversion 2005. And it's been an amazing journey. I mean, there were so many difficulties and challenges, as you can well imagine. But I came to understand a little bit about Ruth. You'll read about Ruth shortly. I experienced that power of a choice. That in a moment, your whole life can just change. And it's just very amazing, and a very good time we are right now before Shavuot. And this is where we had the most important epiphany of all of history, the revelation at Har Sinai. And Hashem should really bless all of us, that we should really experience that epiphany, all of us, on a deeper level, to attach us to really who we are, what our purpose is, how we can implement it. And there is a piece I read today, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. I wrote it down so I won't misquote him. It's from the book To Heal a Fractured World. If an awakening from above is God's gesture of reaching down to humankind, an awakening from below is a human gesture of reaching up toward heaven. Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Deena, for hosting this evening. It's always great to be the closing act. I was telling a friend about this event. You know, I wanted to invite some people to join us this evening, and my friend said to me, "What's the topic going to be?" And I said, "Well, the topic is Epiphanes." And he like scratched his head for a second and thought. He said, "Wait a second. I know that this sounds familiar, but which book of the Bible is that?" So anyhow, it's good to be here this evening. There is a moment when even the most honest person feels like lying, and they usually do. You know that moment. It's the moment when you're standing at the airport and the Israeli security person says to you, did you pack your own bag? And then comes the next question. Did anyone give you anything to bring to Israel? And we all know that we have our aunt's sandwich, and we have like a couple dollars for someone at the kotel, and maybe we have a few other odds and ends, maybe some computers for people down the block, but we always say, no one gave me anything to bring to Israel. But for me, it's a different question that they ask that causes me to lie. And I mean causes me, it's not my fault. When they look at me and they realize that I can speak Hebrew, they tend to ask me, so where did you learn Hebrew? And it's not like a curious kind of question, like I'd like to know where you learned Hebrew, but it's like accusatory. Where did you learn Hebrew? As if I'm not allowed to speak Hebrew. But I always answer as if on a script, and I say to them, I learned Hebrew in school, it was very helpful, my teachers were great, and they say, okay, great, go to Israel. And that's how it always worked. But what I really want to say in my head is I learned Hebrew in India, where I spoke more Hebrew than English for over a month. And one of those people, one of those Hebrew teachers, informal, that I met, was named Shlomi. And Shlomi was a heavy-set guy, probably approaching 40, and Shlomi was Haredi when he was in Jerusalem. In India, Shlomi wore a tank top, short shorts, which is never appropriate, no kippah and no tzitzit. And when I questioned him about it and I said, so do you dress like this in Jerusalem? He told me, well, here my kippah and my tzitzit are on the inside. I thought that was an interesting thought. And I took it with me, and I made up my mind that I would befriend Shlomi. So Shlomi and I, sitting in the Chabad house in Pahar Ganj, New Delhi, we're bonding, it's nighttime, and I say to Shlomi, so what are you planning to do tomorrow? Sort of hoping he'd invite me along wherever he's going. And he said, you know, I just take it day by day. And I took that to me, and I don't plan to do anything tomorrow. So I told Shlomi, well, you know, one of the things that I'm planning to do on this trip, one of the things I've been planning for years is to go to the Taj Mahal. Have you heard of it? And Shlomi looks at me and says, of course I've heard of the Taj Mahal. He says, but how are you going to get there? And I said, well, I'm going to take the train. He said, can I come with you? And I was like, sure, because that's what traveling is about. You know, we hope to pick up some new friends along the way. Please come with me, Shlomi. So we make up. The next morning, we're going to meet at the Chabad house once again. In the morning, we'll set out to the train station, and we'll travel 3.5 hours to the Taj Mahal together. So in the morning, I get there, and as you might have guessed, Shlomi is not exactly punctual. So after a hour-long breakfast and a 45-minute wait, I met Shlomi at the Chabad house, and Shlomi and I get in the rickshaw, and we race as fast as a rickshaw can race to the train station, and we arrive there running towards the desk where you purchase a ticket. And I had read about this in advance in my travel book, and it said that there are various types of tickets, and it was quite confusing. You know, you could get the expensive ticket with air conditioning, the cheaper ticket without air conditioning, the ticket where you get your own seat, the ticket where you share a seat, like a million varieties of tickets, and I couldn't quite figure it out. So I figured, like a good American, I'm going to ask directions. When I get there, I'll get the information from the person at the desk. So Shlomi and I are running from the rickshaw, trying to get there, and when we arrive at the desk where you purchase the tickets, we see that there's a line of about 150 people. And we know that our train leaves in what should be about 15 minutes. And you try to do the math, you calculate it, no matter how fast they deal with all these 150 people, it's not going to happen. And I look at Shlomi and I say, oh, this is terrible, I guess we're not going to make it there today, or maybe we'll have to wait till this afternoon. And Shlomi says, no, you're mistaken. This line is the line for locals. There's no line for tourists. And I figured, well, Shlomi must know what he's doing. So I let Shlomi grab me by the elbow, he drags me to the front of the line, and as you imagine, the Indian people at first try saying something along the lines of, there's a line here, you have to wait, could you please get back in line? And then when they see that you're ignoring them, they try something else, which you don't understand at all because it's in Hindi. And so you decide you should continue ignoring them. And so Shlomi and I run up to the front of the line. We cut in front of everyone, and by now they're all shouting in Hindi. And we can feel the tension because they're also starting to push forwards themselves and press into us. So we're now crushed in between this desk and 150 people that are all shouting in Hindi. And I'm getting a little concerned, but Shlomi seems to not notice them. And I'm thinking, well, he's a lot bigger than me, so maybe it makes sense that he doesn't notice them. But nonetheless, we're standing there in the front of the line, waiting at the desk. And I want to ask the person, so I hear there are a lot of varieties of tickets. Which type of ticket do you recommend for a person like me? And Shlomi says, elbow you in the ribs. We'd like 2 tickets. Give us tickets. We're getting out of here. And the person hands us 2 tickets, and I say, how much does that cost? And it's ridiculously cheap. It's like 2 shekel a ticket for a 3.5-hour journey. And I'm like, wow, what a good deal. So Shlomi and I run out of there as fast as we can before we're eaten up by the mob. And we raced to the train, and by now, since we were so efficient, we didn't wait in the local line, we went in the tourist line, which was no line at all. We get to the train, and we see that it's still mostly empty in our car. We find our car, and we look at our tickets, and we say, like, where's our seats? And we notice that it doesn't have any seat listed. So I said, well, I guess it's like a train in America, and there are no seats assigned. You just pick a seat. So we found the seats that we would like best, you know, kind of towards the middle, but aisle seats, which is a good spot. Nobody is going to be getting on, nobody's going to be getting off. You'll be left alone, but if you need to, you can get out of your seat. So it's perfect. We're sitting there, and we're waiting. We still have about 10 minutes. And there should be about 75 people sitting in this car. And we're waiting, and more people get on, and suddenly some people walk up to us, and they say something in Hindi, so we ignore them, which was our practice. And then they start getting louder. And then suddenly they learned English, and they say to us, you're in our seats. And we said, no, there are no seats. And they say, no, there are no seats on your ticket. Our tickets have seats, and these are our seats. So then we looked at them and we said, okay, so we'll try another seat. And this happened a few times until we realized we actually don't have seats. So Shlomi and I stand in the aisle figuring, well, when somebody gets off at the next stop, like on the subway in New York, we'll take their seats. What we didn't realize is that nobody gets off at the next stop. There's a 3.5-hour journey ahead of us, and not only that, but they sell standing room only seats. So more and more people start crowding into the car, and now it's like 6 minutes left, 4 minutes left till the train is supposed to leave. And there are about 300 people in this car, meant for 75 people. And we are extremely crushed. There was one heavy-set elderly woman who takes a sack of rice, sets it on my right foot, and sits down on top of it as if my foot is a seat. Another elderly woman, leans on my left side and falls asleep immediately. I don't know how she did that. So one lady's sleeping on this side, one lady's sitting on that side, and more people keep crushing in and pressing in. And this train, since it was the cheap tickets, did not attract the clientele that showers most often. So the people on the train did not smell beautiful. Besides for that, it was like 100 degrees with extreme humidity, and the train, since it was the cheap train, doesn't come with windows. So not only do the people not smell great, the train is extremely hot. There are these tiny slits for some ventilation instead of windows, and more people keep piling on. Eventually, the train starts to leave, we roll out, and we know we have a 3.5-hour journey ahead of us, and we can't move an inch. And nobody around us understands English, so we can't talk to anyone. We're just stuck there for this journey. And we start to go, and after a few minutes, maybe like half an hour, but who knows how long, people start to pass out around us. Somebody passes out, and you expect that they're going to call a doctor, because that's what I would do. But they don't call a doctor. No one's alarmed. It's as if this happens every day. And so they take the people who pass out, they set them down on the floor, and suddenly there's an extra seat. So sooner or later, people start to sit down, and there's a bit more breathing room. But it's still very troubling. And we get to the first stop, the second stop, and I realize that they don't stop at every stop. At the smaller stops, the train slows down instead of stopping. And as the train slows down, people try to jump on. The problem is that with 300 people in a 75-person car, the doors are quite crowded, and the people at the doors don't want to let more people on. So suddenly there's a brawl at every stop, and people are pushing each other out the door. So you hear thud, thud, thud. And I'm just glad, well, it's great we chose the seats in the middle of the train. At least we're not thrown off the train. And so we're continuing, and it's now an hour and a half into the train ride, and we're going, and we're on our way to the Taj Mahal, and it's really terrible, and I'm getting dehydrated, and I'm thinking, wow, I could really use a drink. But then I realized, well, I don't know if there are bathrooms on the train, and even if there were bathrooms, I couldn't move because I can't move. because this lady's sitting on my foot with a sack of rice. So I decide that the strategic thing is to not drink. So slowly I feel the water pouring out of my body and realize I might get dehydrated before we get there. What do I do? And I don't know what to do except for watching myself slowly dehydrating. And I'm thinking about this and I'm dreaming, like, I wish I could just drink a little bit of water. And I know I have it in my water bottle, but I can't drink it. It's like when you're on a boat surrounded by salt water and there's like water everywhere but not a drop to drink. This is how I felt. I had that water bottle but I couldn't drink anything and I'm dehydrating. And then we get to the next stop, and this was like the snack stop. You expect there to be like a concession stand or something like that, but it doesn't work that way on this train car. A 12-year-old boy gets onto the car, and he can't go through the aisle, obviously. He has a tray of coconuts that he's carrying, and he walks barefoot on everyone's shoulder, walking from one end of the car to the other end of the car. And I would have actually bought coconut, except that I couldn't reach my pockets to get any money. So that didn't work either. And we're going, and now it's like 2.5 hours into the train ride, and all I can think to myself is, wow, I really wish that I had a drop of water to drink. And I'm looking out the slats on the side of the car, and I see that there's a dirty set of steps going up to somebody's house, and I'm like, my dream in life is to have a drop of water and sit on those beautiful dirty steps leading up to that broken down house. That would be heaven. If only I could get there, get off this train, and drink a drop of water on the dirty steps. That would be what I dream of. And in that moment, I felt shocked, and I looked at myself and I said, 2.5 hours ago, I was dreaming of viewing the most beautiful building in the entire world, the Taj Mahal, this place where 99.9% of the world never gets to visit. And now, in the period of 2.5 hours, the sum total of all my ambition in life is to drink a drop of water on some dirty steps. And that's when I realized that it depends where your mind is. It depends where my mind is. My mind could be at the Taj Mahal, or my mind could be on a dirty, smelly, humid, hot, stinky train. And I would choose to keep my mind at the Taj Mahal.
Thank you to everyone. I think it was wonderful hearing all of you. And that's the end of the evening, but please feel free to hang around here and maybe talk to people that you don't know or that you do know. You're welcome to stick around. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.